Welcome. There you go. My name is Michael McGill. I'm with MCT, and this has quite a history, actually. There's been a group of us meeting for 2-3 years in order to kind of say, how can we help the arts in Missoula? How can we encourage the arts in Missoula? How can we make Missoula known for the arts? And so this is a little bit of a culmination of that. Recently, Destination Missoula has gotten involved in getting the word out about the story of the arts in Missoula. And there's been some studies come out recently also that I thought would be very important for this group of people to actually know and understand what it means in this day and age to be part of such an amazing group of people. I think Missoula is definitely not what you might call the average town as far as the arts go, and I think it's time we recognize it. Tonight, we're going to have an agenda that includes the mayor saying a few words about the arts in Missoula. We're going to have Tom Benson is going to present a PowerPoint that actually talks about the study that the Americans for the Arts completed. And then Barb and Jim, I'm not going to make you both McGowans. Barb Nealon and Jim McGowan are going to present some stuff that has to do with the Destination Missoula efforts, having to do with the arts and culture. And then we're going to have a little bit of a talk about how can we, as a group, take our next steps forward in order to help each other and use our resources in an intelligent way. I think it's important to remember that the arts is a major driving force in Missoula and needs to create a voice that acknowledges that place in this community. And so I'm hoping that from these many different organizations and different people that we can actually come to a consensus of the way forward, really. So with that being said, I would like to introduce the mayor of Missoula, Mr. John Angus. You know how to use one of these?
I will endeavor, yes, thank you very much. Well, I have a stage and a microphone, and you have time, so how pleasant for all of us, really. The PowerPoint is only about 78 slides. They go pretty quickly. Mostly about municipal budgeting and the minutia therein. So we'll get through that, and then we'll have some inspiring words as well, we hope. There will be no PowerPoint from me. There will simply be this notion that I will offer you today. I've been talking with a number of folks in this room, and the lovely part of this privilege I enjoy of serving as mayor is I get to know many of you on many levels for many different reasons. I will even admit to knowing Gary Gillette this evening, who, by the way, is sitting alone and actually
I did that on purpose, John.
The order of protection doesn't allow for that. So if someone could join Gary, that would be super helpful. I've had the chance to talk to lots of you about what you all do, and the arts in Missoula, to steal a turn of phrase, is greater than the sum of its parts, and a portion of, I think, the conversation this evening is about understanding what that sum is and moving that sum forward and letting lots of other folks know what that sum is. So you've all heard of Austin, Texas? Music capital of the United States. You know how they got to be the music capital of the United States? They said they were. Ain't nobody bestows that title, right? There is no one who sits on the United Nations Commission on naming cities for their priorities or their gifts. it turns out the communities are about that, and what I know about this community is that we want for shrinking violets, and that is on our side. So if Missoula is the arts capital of the United States, you're not going to hear an argument from me, and frankly, you're not going to hear many arguments from anyone else. We have the ability to tell that story over and over again for a couple of reasons. One, it's pesky, but facts matter. And what Tom will present is a study that suggests that Missoula is indeed an arts capital in the United States for all sorts of reasons, not the least of which that it employs people, it exports its product, and it makes lives better, and it turns out it makes money. And some of you, I know, struggle with that, but the fact is arts make money. And we have an opportunity here to invest in the collective that is creativity. So that the city of Missoula, we continue to make those investments. We do it in a couple of ways that are quite tangible. The first of which is the city of Missoula invests annually in Arts Missoula. Arts Missoula is the clearinghouse for the city of Missoula in terms of building relationships among arts groups and building relationships among folks who are engaged in cultural activities, sister city activities. But beyond that, Arts Missoula, now in cooperation, I hope, with Destination Missoula and all of you, is in the business of selling the brand, talking about the fact that this is not a secret anymore. This is not something we share only among ourselves. We want to share it with the rest of the United States, again, for all sorts of good reasons. There are, for every face in this room, there is a story to tell about art. I can offer one quick example. When I was first elected to this job, I sat in my office with a young woman who said, you know, I think that kids are underserved in some neighborhoods in Missoula, so I'd like to create an art center for the community, focusing on kids and makerspace. And the woman was very young and smarter than I, and it's the place where I learned to have an open mind about everything that crosses my threshold in the mayor's office. Because within about 5 years, this woman who didn't have a nickel to put together, but had a dream and was willing to take advice from folks who might not otherwise be on her radar, founded ZAC. And now, yeah. And it's perfectly appropriate to applaud for Zach, and Kia's here, and that organization has filled a remarkable niche in the community because one person had vision, a couple other folks shared the vision, and then more and more folks shared the vision. Ultimately, that vision becomes something tangible, something real, and something that makes a difference in the lives of our community. And that story gets repeated over and over in this room. This was the central school when I was a kid. It ain't anymore. It's a center for the performing arts, and it's headquarters for an organization that does work all over the world. The stories repeat themselves over and over. So we want that story to get told in remarkable ways, and we want to be a catalyst for you all to tell those stories. So that's part of what that conversation is about, and that's part of what Arts Missoula does. We also, through our Percent for Art program, ensure that the built environment reflects community values in terms of art. So we have a committee who slaves away to make sure that when we build new stuff, that new stuff isn't just practical and useful for the sake of operational stuff for the city. We make sure that those facilities are beautiful, and again, they reflect the values of the community, and those values have to do with seeing something beyond the mundane and providing opportunities for people to think beyond their lives about the lives of others and what creativity means in that larger package. And the third thing we're doing through our work in the built environment is trying to ensure that we create a community where makers, where people who are creating art have an audience. So we concentrate our growth and our development in places that continue to matter and places where we can achieve the kind of critical mass that we need to ensure that creators can continue to create and that they have an audience for those creations. There's more to be done, and what I hope is that there is an outcome here this evening, a path that the City of Missoula can embark on with you all beyond pretty words or a PowerPoint. We want to continue to make an investment in you and the work you're doing, because that investment pays tremendous dividends throughout the community and will pay tremendous dividends in the long haul. This is a conversation that is ripe. It's a conversation that shouldn't end here this evening, and it's a conversation about the long game. And you all are the best people to be engaged, you're all the best people to be enthused, and you're all the best people to be doing this job. So I'm grateful for you being here this evening. That was my broker calling, by the way.
It's a hot tip.
Reminding me I'm broke. And with that, I will leave you to the program and to the good work that I'm sure you will all engage in the same way you engage individually and collectively in the good work you do every day. Thank you for being here. Thanks for taking the time of a Wednesday evening, and breathe deep. The air is good. Tom does have a PowerPoint.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure when John Engen is your warm-up act. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to talk about arts and the economy. This is something I've been talking about a good part of the summer. It's a study that just was released this past June by Americans for the Arts, and I'm going to pass out a sheet here that has a whole bunch of numbers, and I'll explain these numbers as we go along. You can just pass it around until we run out. So this study is called Arts and Economic Prosperity 5. Obviously, it's the fifth such study that Americans for the Arts has put together since the early 1990s. Actually, Missoula has participated in all 5 studies in the past. It's called Arts and Economic Prosperity 5, the economic impact of nonprofit arts and cultural organizations and their audiences. It's a long title, and what you may notice is it says nonprofit. It doesn't, right away, it doesn't take into consideration the for-profit, which is a whole other sector. And that's a good question to ask. Why just the nonprofit? Because really what Americans for the Arts is trying to do nationally, and what we can do locally and regionally as well, is they're trying to change the conversation, because from contributions to the arts to investment in the community through the arts. And the nonprofit arts and cultural organizations receive the bulk of the funding from a lot of foundations and from the government, everything from the NEA down to the Montana Arts Council and municipal organizations. So that's why we're focusing on nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. It is a study that's in 2 parts. One is the direct impact of arts and cultural organizations on the community. Say, we're sitting in the MCT Center for the Performing Arts. The Missoula Children's Theater is one organization, and it pumps money directly into the economy. And there's obviously a number of different arts organizations that do that. And the second part of it is the audiences. Once you've gone to if you go to, say, an MCT production, what else are you spending outside of, above and beyond the cost of admission? Are you going out to dinner? Did you come from out of town? Did you stay in a hotel? What did it cost to get you here? Did you buy the T-shirt at intermission? All that kind of thing is part of this. So it's as I said, it's a 2-part study. And a lot of times you may not think that you're contributing to the arts in this way. For instance, when we have a First Friday and say want to go to the Missoula Art Museum for what they're showing at First Friday, well, what I do is I usually try to take a little time off in the late afternoon so I can go home, change, come down with my wife, and very often we need to stop and get gas. So I pull out the credit card and get some gas, and then as we walk around, we go to not only the art museum, we go to some other galleries. We might stop into a retail store and buy something, some jewelry. They're usually open on Friday nights. Then we run into some friends and go out for dinner and have some drinks. By the time I get home, I'm pulling out my credit card receipts. I say, I've spent a lot of money. And I haven't necessarily spent it directly on art, but I spent it in relation to this arts event, First Friday Gallery Night. That's what this sort of indirect impact of the arts are. With that, we're being highly technical here, and I don't have a clicker. I'll just say next slide. There we go. This is the most comprehensive study ever, according to Americans for the Arts. 341 study regions in the United States. We worked on this throughout the 2016 year, so it took about a year and a half to put all this information together. Missoula is one of 341 study regions that participated in this study. And it's everything from the very small cities of 1,500 right on up to some of our largest cities of 3 and 4 million people, as well as a lot of counties, multi-county regions. Many states, through their state art agencies, participated in this study. What we did was we asked all the arts organizations to submit a report of how they spent their money for the calendar year. That was one portion of it, and then a second portion of it was that the Arts Missoula Board went to about 21 or 22 different arts events throughout the calendar year, and we asked audiences questions about how they spent money in relation to this particular event. So there were about 800 surveys that were collected, and there were 34 organizations that participated, and all that information went to Americans for the Arts, and they had a third party look this over. This is a way of saying that we just didn't pull these numbers out of thin air. We went through the standard economic input-output models, and it's also a very conservative study. It's conservative in that if we only get a 50% participation, that's all we're going to take. We're not going to assume that there's another 50% out there we didn't get. So all of that is a way of saying that they're trying to be as conservative and as legitimate as they can in their studies. As you can see, Missoula is one of the reasons why they can call this all 50 states participated. You can see that we're the only one in Montana. And I'm hopeful that in the future we can get more communities in our region to participate in this study, because I think it's really important that way. I'll have the next slide after that. So in Missoula, what it showed was that we are a $54 million industry in spending in 2000. This is 2015 numbers, and that's divided into organizations, the direct spending of $20.4 million, and audiences spending $33.6 million. I looked at the national study. Is a very large number. It's a $166 billion industry, billion with a B. And the organization and audience split, that sort of 40-60%, is very similar on the national part as it is in Missoula. So I was thankful that we were not kind of an outlier in that respect. $54 million is a lot of money. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is try to figure out, what does that mean? How does it compare to anything else? How about the next slide? These are some of the organizations. I mentioned there were 34 nonprofit organizations that participated, and we went to 22 or 23 nonprofit performances. We know who a lot of them are. In fact, we probably know who most of them are. And here they are. And the backdrop is the River City Roots Festival. What I thought I'd do is I'm going to throw you a lot of numbers here, but I thought I'd intersperse it with a few visuals here so you don't fall completely asleep. So let's move on to the next one. Of that $54 million, it comes out to 1,913 full-time equivalent jobs in the nonprofit arts industry. Again, I'm saying, well, that's interesting. What does that mean? So I Googled two of the biggest industries in Missoula that you'd think of. When you think of Missoula and you think of the economy, well, you think of hospitals and you think of the University of Montana. Well, what are their FTE numbers? And I couldn't get a specific answer, but I found more or less that at the University of Montana right now there are about 1,400 FTEs. And if you combine the two hospitals together, there are 2,300 FTEs. Put that in perspective with nonprofit arts organizations. We're not a centralized industry. There's no top-down, there's no CEO, there's no annual report, there's no shareholders we have to report to, so nobody really thinks of us as this industry as they think of, say, the University of Montana or the medical industry. But now we can talk about the University of Montana, the medical industry, and nonprofit arts organizations in the same sentence. And I just did. So how about the next slide? It also represents $39.2 million resident household income. That's salaries, wages. And the next slide is $4.4 million in state and local revenue through payroll taxes and that sort of thing. $4.4 million on a national level. I mentioned $166 billion. On a national level, it's $27 billion goes back to all forms of government, state, local, and national revenue. Now, state, local, and national revenue nationally invests about $5 billion, to the arts. So $5 billion turns out to be a $27 billion return on the investment on a national level. I don't know what the numbers are, state and local, but the point is, as we're changing the conversation, we're talking about contributions to the arts being a community investment, and this is a big reason why. So, next slide, please. So here are a lot of numbers. What I tried to do is, as I said, I wanted to compare to see how Missoula stands up against other communities its size. So the numbers I just gave you, 54 million, 1,913 FTEs, 39 million in resident household income, that's all on the left side. Okay, in the middle is the median of similar study regions of Missoula in this study, population of 50 to 100,000. Of which there were 25 or so cities that were in that region. And now, if you compare those two numbers, then it starts to make sense that Missoula has got something going here when it comes to the arts and the economy. We're almost 3 times the size of average cities our size, all the way down the line. And then if you take a look at the national median, which is on the right column, that includes all of the cities that participated in this study, and most of the cities are much larger than us. Most of the cities in America are larger than 100,000 people. So, and we're again about half as large in our nonprofit industry. So that starts to say that we really have a healthy industry in Missoula in just the nonprofit arts. So let's take the next slide, please. So I thought I'd give you another visual break here, a beer break at German Fest. By the way, German Fest is coming up in 10 days. But that's just odd timing here. But anyway, the reason I show you this slide really is that I want to talk about audience spending. And when you look at a slide like this, and you look at an event in Caras Park, and with German Fest, just like River City Roots coming up and Out to Lunch and Downtown Tonight and so many events in Caras Park, they're free. So the only reason that they succeed financially is through audience spending. Okay, so we want to take a look at that audience spending number, and I'll have the next slide. So in Missoula, it's $25.99 per person per event is what it comes out to be through this study. Most of that is food and drink. But as you can also see, there's the local transportation, the souvenirs and gifts, the jewelry I talked about before. Lodging, $3.34. That's a great hotel price, don't you think? $3.34. Oh, yeah, this is an average, right? This is an average, and most people aren't coming from far away. They're not staying in hotels. But that's the way it parcels out. Now, about 5 years ago when we did this study, that number was around $20 per person. So in the past 5 years, there's been $5 to $6 more per person that's been spent. I think that's just more consumer confidence than the last study that came out right after the Great Recession. So those are good numbers there, and we wanted to see the next slide. One of the things we did, we asked people on this questionnaire a very simple question: what's your zip code? And when we can tell the zip code, then we can tell if they're living in Missoula County or if they're living outside of Missoula County. And if they're inside Missoula County, they are the locals. And if they're outside of Missoula County, whether it's in Hamilton or Polson, or whether it's Chicago or Moscow, they're the cultural tourists. And that we really want to know that because we know intuitively that the cultural tourists will spend more than the locals. We want to find that out. So we have 20% non-local, the cultural tourist, and 79% the locals. The next slide. But the non-locals, the cultural tourists, are spending $53.45 versus $18.83. Okay? So if we can bump up that 20% of non-locals, then that $53 will go much farther in our community. That's the kind of information we want to find out. That's the kind of thing we want to, the more tourists we can bring in and see arts events, the better it is for our community, the better it is for the arts events itself. We also asked them another question, and the survey revealed that 41% of non-locals said this arts event is the primary purpose for my coming to Missoula. So 41% of the non-locals are coming here just for the arts event. Next slide. And when we talk about non-locals and tourists, what better slide to show than the International Choral Festival, which brings in a couple of thousand, and a lot of them are actually the performers as well as the audiences. Next slide. Something else they put in this study that it didn't get actually factored into the economics, but we asked the organizations about volunteerism, and we have about almost 3,000 volunteers. Putting in almost 95,000 hours, and that has an economic value. That is something that the organizations would have to spend money on if they didn't have the volunteers. So that's just another thing to factor in. And for those of you who are in nonprofit organizations, you can use this information, and it's on our website if you're applying for grants. That's the whole point of it as well. So I just threw that in to show arts volunteerism. Next slide. One of the things Americans for the Arts does is they do these periodic surveys, and they surveyed a group of Americans last year, and they asked about whether these folks believe that arts and culture are important to the quality of their lives. And 87% said yes. That's not too surprising. If you asked 8 out of 10, if you asked 10 people, do arts and culture is that important to the quality of your life? Chances are 8 or 9 people would say yes. But the other one was 82% of Americans believe arts and culture are important to the local businesses and to the economy. That's a change from the way it was 5-10 years ago. People are starting across the country, they're starting to understand the importance of arts and the economy. Now, I say all this, and I don't want to discount, I should have said this at the beginning, I don't want to discount the fact that the fundamental purpose of the arts is not economic. The fundamental purpose of the arts is to inspire us, to delight us, to unite us. It can be very challenging. People can be quite offended by art. But on the other hand, in the end, the arts make us more productive citizens. They make us more creative, and frankly, they make us more interesting. And it's an economic driver, and that's the whole purpose of this study. And the next slide. Want to talk about Spark for just a minute or two? Spark, we all know, is the Kennedy Center initiative to improve and enhance arts education, and we've implemented. We're just about to start, I think, our 3rd or 4th year in the schools, and we always talk about how important Spark is for the students. And of course, that is the main purpose of it. But secondarily, Spark is also an employer of many, many artists. And I know because I write during the course of the year, I write every month, I write checks in the tune of $15,000 to $16,000 to local artists. So I just want to throw in Spark as again, another part of this whole economic scene. Next slide. And these are the organizations that participated in this study. Now, I like this slide very much because it really shows the arts organizations as a team. We rarely get to talk about, rarely get to present ourselves as a united front in nonprofit arts. But with this study, we can. And I really appreciate the fact that 34 organizations took the time to fill this study out. And I think it makes a huge difference to the study, and it really showcases Missoula quite well. And the next slide. Got a couple of quotes from James Grunke here. Missoula Economic Partnership very much understands and realizes the importance of studies such as this. I also picked out some slides specifically. The top two slides, the Montana Repertory Theater and the Montana Museum of Art and Culture, are located both on the University of Montana campus. And we really can't talk about arts and culture in Missoula without talking about the university and all that and that town and gown relationship, which is so critical. The Missoula Children's Theater, we know that 80%, I think it's 80% of their business, 70% of the business takes place somewhere else outside of Missoula. But it is also the greatest example I can think of an advertisement for our city, because those little red trucks say Missoula, and it drives all over the country, it's all over the world. And every time I go to a conference, when I mention I'm from Missoula, very often the next words out of whoever I'm talking to's mouth is, oh, Missoula Children's Theater. So we're not only, so they're an exporter of the arts. So is the Montana Repertory Theater, exporter of the arts. So is Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater. Dolce Canto just came back from Korea a year ago. The Montana Repertory Theater just came back from China. So not only are we talking about money coming into Missoula, but it's also a great exporter. Next slide. Lots of little symbols up here. These are the national organizations in Washington, D.C. that endorsed this study. And they include the National Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, the National Lieutenant Governors Association, the National Association of Counties, the National Association of Economic Development Organizations, Destinations International, of the CVBs, National Conference of State Legislatures. So this study is endorsed by a lot of organizations in Washington, D.C. Next slide. And finally, the mayor gave a great quote about how Missoula's arts community feeds the soul, and it also fills our coffers. And I like to say that the arts are not just food for the soul, they are also food on the table. And the final slide here says that the arts mean business. That is the Americans for the Arts tagline here. And these organizations, U.S. Bank and the City of Missoula, Montana Arts Council, and my board of directors at Arts Missoula helped put this all together. This has a lot of information. If you want to find out more about the national study, it is at their website. And if you go to artsmissoula.org, you can find out the specific Missoula part of the study. But I think this was a great effort on the part of all of the nonprofit arts organizations, and I think it speaks volumes for how valuable and important arts are to Missoula. So is now a nice time for questions, or did you want to wait till after? Does anybody have any questions about this specifically? Yeah, Jeremy.
I'm just curious if there's, all of the information about Missoula and how many FTEs and how many billions of dollars, but is there another city that, like Austin, we've heard of, that we can kind of look at next to Missoula and go, we're like them? Like, why?
There are cities, yeah, and there are. there are, on the Americans for the Arts website, they've got reams of information about, and they have information about each specific city. So yes, you can do that. I'm just trying to think right now. Missoula is on par with, pretty close to cities like Eugene, which is much larger than us. Not too much smaller than Tacoma. We have about the same, our economic numbers are similar to that of Boulder, Colorado. These are all cities that are larger than us. Yeah. Well, thanks very much. I've been spending a lot of time this summer speaking to groups that need to hear this information. We really need to, this is really directed towards the legislatures, the city councils, municipal organizations, because they have the power of the purse. They sometimes need to be convinced. As we know nationally, the government nationally needs to be convinced that we need to continue funding the NEA. That's what this kind of a report is directed at. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but you guys ought to know this as well, because this is a very powerful tool, and if you want to utilize this information for your own fundraising, have at it. Yes, Laura.
So I noticed the sub-headline talked about nonprofit arts and cultural organizations. So how broadly did you encompass history and cultural organizations that are not specifically arts?
How did I identify that?
Is humanities and is history included?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Humanities. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, we looked at and you can find this. You can go to the IRS and find out who's registered as a nonprofit, and then you look at the nonprofit organizations and say, do they fit into this? Like we stayed away from environmental nonprofit organizations or basic need nonprofit organizations. And some organizations like the Missoula Downtown Association just gave us information based on their arts events, not on everything they did. So, yeah, Leslie.
So because you did not include, and this study doesn't include individual artists.
Right.
The truth is the numbers are much larger.
Oh yeah, the numbers when you yes, I mean when you include artists, when you include art galleries, when you include well, we've just built 2 amphitheaters in Missoula that are for-profit operations. When you include all of that, yes, it's much larger. Yeah. And you know, Americans for the Arts, I think they're doing, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is directed towards those with the power of the purse that can invest in communities that way, and that's why they limit it to just nonprofit arts organizations. But yes, it's a much larger number if you can think of that. Well, thanks very much.
Assuming somebody's going to put ours up. So, my name is Barb Nealon. I know most of you, I think. I'm really thrilled to see how many of you are here tonight from so many different organizations and individual artists. It's a good cross-section of the arts in Missoula, and I really appreciate you taking the time. As John said, everybody's got a story, right? And so the arts have been near and dear to my heart. Before I took this job 14 years ago, I was the publicist at the Missoula Children's Theater for nearly 7 years. I raised my daughter in this theater, and this place is just a very special thing to me. And so I took that love for the arts into the job that I have now. And it's always been a forefront for me. For those of you who don't know what we do, Destination Missoula actually markets the city of Missoula. So our job is to let the greater world know about our community, whether they are coming in for conferences or we're bringing them in for sporting events or any kind of event, cultural events, or just your leisure tourist, right? So our job is just to get the word out of what an amazing community this is. And one of the things that I found in this job is that, most people think when they think of coming to Montana, they think of premier recreation. And we absolutely have that, right? But what sets us apart? And in doing this job for as many years as I have, there are a couple things that I've realized. Our recreation is absolutely phenomenal, but most everybody in Montana has phenomenal recreation. What sets us apart as far as our recreation goes is the fact that it's so accessible, right? You can go down and you can kayak Brennan's Wave over your lunch hour, right? Or you can go hike in 60,000 acres of wilderness area up in the Rattlesnake, and you can be back at your desk to finish the day out. So we have something that's very special that way. But that isn't really what sets us apart. What really sets us apart from everybody else in Montana is our arts and culture. It is ingrained in who we are, what we do on a daily basis. It's the soul of Missoula, truly. And so as we're looking at how do we get ourselves out there, we have found that going after our niche markets and what really sets us apart is the way to differentiate ourselves. And arts and culture is a major way of doing that. This year we've also identified our music as being another major way of doing that. There are sectors of our community that are taking off, are thriving, and people are coming from all over to experience it. I've been actually kind of blown away by the people who walk into the visitor center and you're talking to them because you love to talk to them and ask them why they're in Missoula. And I remember the very first time that I was talking to a couple from Portland, and I said, why'd you come? Why are you here? And they said, oh, well, we went to a concert last night. And I said, oh, that's great, but why did you come? What was the purpose of your trip? And they looked at me kind of funny and they said, we came for a concert last night. And I said, well, why would you come all the way from Portland to Missoula, Montana to go to a concert? You guys have every bit as good of music. You've got, crazy venues. You've got it right there in your backyard. Why would you come to Missoula, Montana? And what they said to me was, we love coming to this city. We love the people here. We love the experience here. The venues are small and they're intimate, and the people make the experience for us, and that's all of you. And that's what we're finding in our marketing, is that people want the experience, and you guys are the experience, right? So we need you. The purpose of this is to start a dialogue with everybody. I'm going to have Jim take over here in just a second. And tell you what we are currently doing in our marketing and specifically for the arts. But the bigger discussion for us and what we're really trying to find out is, what else can we do? What is it that you guys need for that 30,000-foot view? For us to be able to take out into the world and say, this is who we are as an arts community. And we need all of you guys participating and being a part of this on a regular basis. And that much, is kind of where we're going here, is we need everybody from the individual artists to the gallery owners, to the museums, to the nonprofits, everybody, to participate and be a voice for us so that we can go out in the world and bring people in. So our job is to bring people in. Once we've got them here, then your job is to get them to your doorstep, okay? So that's really that's what we're here for. So Jim McGowan is the owner of Windfall Studios, and Windfall Studios is our media company, and so they kind of do it all for us. They handle our website, they do all of our PR for us, they do our social media for us, you name it, they do it. And so I'm going to have Jim kind of show you some of the things that we're currently doing, and then we'd like to open up a discussion about where do we go from here and what does it look like from here. So Jim.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and Windfall is honored to work with Missoula and folks like Barb and Tom Benson and all that they do for the tourism industry. I'm having flashbacks to like 7th grade Christmas program here, so bear with me. One thing to mention on the first slide before I jump into this is there's this place. We've worked really hard over the last few years to try to find a brand for a really diverse and complex city, and how to get a messaging platform that could be used across multiple planes, from tourism and economic development to relocation. And we feel like there's this place is one of the first really solid steps we've been able to make in the last few years. And it's a great opportunity for Destination Missoula and the Missoula Economic Partnership and the Missoula Chamber of Commerce, Area Chamber of Commerce, to kind of come under one umbrella on a slogan. And we're really excited about that and the progress and the potential that puts forward for us. So next slide. Kind of what we do. Windfall, agency of record. We have a lot of things we could throw at you. We could do 2 hours of this and go through everything we've worked on in terms of arts and culture. But I'm going to zero in on, our overall mission is pretty simple. Heads in beds, and ideally heads in beds in the time of year that the industry in Missoula tells us they need them. We've worked harder and harder on shoulder season as summer has gotten to be more and more at capacity. But we still work summer, but we're trying to look for opportunities and segments. And what's great about arts and culture is that provides us 12 months a year to target. There's events throughout the year we can go after, and it provides a lot of shoulder season capabilities. In terms of geography and demographics, you look at kind of the cities we target, a lot of that can be direct flight. It's what our research, what our call center in Missoula is telling us where people are responding, kind of zeroes in our messaging to what we're after. We talk about in-state, this 200 to 300 mile radius from Missoula that expands that into Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Sandpoint. We took one of the things from Arts Missoula, Meet Me in Missoula project. We were able to take that, take the baton on that and move that forward, and we do that 2 to 3 times a year based on looking for a really arts and culture rich week. And we target a pretty large drive market and direct flight market zone to bring people in during those times of the year, and that's gone really well for us, which I'll talk about later. In terms of demographics who we're after, I won't read all that, but arts and culture is very much part of our target. They very much put heads in beds, so they fit into that category of what we target in terms of our messaging and our strategic development. But a lot of other things too. You look at, we've worked really hard this year on military families, because what's great about military travel is that can be a shoulder season component. Those families travel whenever their significant other, their parent from the military's home, they travel. And so we've seen through our research that really can impact fall and spring travel to Missoula. And the LGBT community. They tend to travel even more in off-season, and they show a pattern of that and of great spending in off-season. So we've really zeroed in on those 2 targets this year and done well with that. Next slide. We have a Matador video. I'm sure you've seen the first video. We didn't bring it here to play it again because I think people have seen it by now. But if you haven't, go to destinationmissoula.org and play the video that's right on the homepage. We're pretty proud of that first video. We're about to bring out video number 2 that's going to be even more, have more depth in arts and culture and the music scene and outdoor recreation, and our food and drink and scenic landscapes and events will all be part of that video. We're almost done with it. We had to wait until the amphitheater season ends to get all of their drone footage that we wanted. So we'll be out with that video in the next few weeks, and we're excited to show that. Wanted to show it tonight. Next slide. In terms about creative, we do a lot. I mean, no matter where you look, if it's print, broadcasts, digital, social, we're pretty much everywhere with our messaging. Again, targeting through those mediums the audiences that we want to reach, which we talked about in that demographic breakdown. We follow this there's this place, and that there's this place takes on different meanings based on the segment, right? So we're really, which I'll talk about in a second, going after the sports market. So that whole Outfield is Endless is really a campaign targeting the Fort Missoula Regional Park and all of the sports venues and trying to hyper boost their visibility and convince people that we're a place to enjoy sport. We also talk about you can catch a wave and a show on the same block, focusing on outdoor and arts and culture, but then More Than Rivers Meet, focusing on meetings and other types of gatherings and reunions and weddings. Next slide. In terms of consumer leisure media placements, we try to be everywhere. This is only a small fraction of what we do. Overall, though, we're really excited. We delivered a 30.7% generation of inquiry engagement off our media campaigns, one of our strongest years yet. And so we feel like we continue to build off that There's This Place brand and refine the message, and we're getting better results each year. Next slide. In terms of web traffic, I mean, destinationmissoula.org had about 2,000 people, I think, at the end of the first year. You flash forward 7 or 8 years later, we're at almost 700,000 unique visitors to the site, making it a dominant tourism site for the region and of course, the state. You look at unique website visitors to the prior year, just the growth in 1 year, almost 65,000 additional unique visitors. You look at our geographics in terms of Utah, Washington, California, Texas, and Oregon, all part of that growing market that we continue to see. And Texas has gone from like 11th or 12th in the last 2 years and become a major influence, a major force in terms of inquiries and people that are actually planning trips here. Next slide. In terms of zeroing that down, I'm still throwing a lot of numbers at you, but to arts and culture, we have over 300,000 unique visitors that we organically drove to destinationmissoula.org. A lot of time and effort is put into organic search marketing. It's not as sexy and flashy as paid media, radio spots, TV, but to me, that's where the war is fought in terms of destinations and DMOs. And so we really fight there to dominate. When you type in Missoula Arts and Culture, you type in Missoula Museums, museum galleries, Montana galleries, Montana museums, we want to be as close to #1 as we can get. And we feel like we've done a really good job the last 3 years of overcoming our competitors and really positioning that. Our hope is not to compete with the individual websites of like the Art Museum, Missoula Art Museum, or other major players, but to provide another way to catapult people to your sites to get the content that they need. Of the 300,000 we drove from search engines, over 60,000 were from arts, culture, and event keywords and phrases that we targeted, either organically or with paid search to get that done. And we had almost 30,000 people that we drove through social channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, that we drove using either arts, culture, events, related type content and posts. Next slide. In terms of overall social media, that's a pretty big number considering we had about 60,000 in overall audience, up from 43 the previous year. So you see that arts and culture make up a big target of what is coming to us through our social media marketing. Next slide. We have a call center in Missoula. Many of you probably don't realize. That call center is our front line at Windfall. They take all of the inbound calls of people planning trips to Missoula. We learn very data-driven about what people are looking for, what they want, what time of year they're coming, what the size of their travel group, how are they getting here, what airlines are they using. We can survey all that kind of data. We had 143,654 total inquiries last year. That was up 50% from the prior year, the biggest jump we've ever had. And we've been at this since, how long have you been there, Barb?
14 years.
14 years? And so we see the potential. Next slide. In terms of public relations, kind of the other thing that goes on behind the scenes, we do a combination of things. Obviously, we work to put out story leads and information out to major media, but also big influencers, bloggers, other social influencers. But then we also invite ones that we think fit the right category, whether we brought military family influencers in this year, we brought in the LGBT community. We'll have a huge opportunity in September to focus on that with a writer from Seattle and from Chicago. And so we're really excited to see what the publicity strategy has done for us. Almost over 14 million in total publicity value, and just showing you some of the local and regional media, what it's translated to. Next slide. The travel guide. The travel guide's been around for a long time. We're really excited this year. At the end of September of 2017, our 2018 relocation and visitor guide will come out. It's the first kind of partnership again with the Chamber and the Tourism Bureau. And Missoula Economic Partnership and even the MDA are part of that guide. So we're really excited to have this new official one source for the city. Next slide. Some of the partnerships we've worked on, a cross between organizations, private and public. Done a lot of things. We're a big part of Roots Festival. We've tried to work really hard with Arts Missoula, which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. Glacier Country Regional Tourism. And we've really worked this year to reach out across the state with new partnerships with Yellowstone Country Tourism. And now this year with Southeast Montana Tourism, which includes Billings, to where we'll market collectively together to reach a larger audience and stretch our tourism dollars. Next slide. So now we kind of shift into how can Destination Missoula help the arts community. Let's jump one more slide. I'm going to talk about two models that kind of give you an example of what we're already doing. One of our charges as we ended last year was to target on how to grow music-related tourism for the city, kind of our music model. So we started out by meeting with stakeholders. We met with Logjam, we met with Knitting Factory, we met with Big Sky Brewery, the University of Montana, Osprey Stadium, reached out across every stakeholder that we thought made a good fit for that music model. We collected their dreams and desires and wishes and tried to come up with a strategy. Then we looked at our conversion data, people that we surveyed that were on the ground in Missoula that responded to our advertising. What did they do when they got here? What were the positive and negatives from their trip? And we looked through all of that and how that compared to who talked about music and if it lived up to their expectations, if it did, if it didn't, why. So we merged all that data together to develop the model. Then we looked at a public relations strategy, a paid media placement aspect, and then a social and digital strategy, try to come up with a comprehensive campaign. And I can tell you that every stakeholder had a different desire. So you had to really kind of merge it together, and it's taken months to kind of come up with something that was cohesive. Next slide. So obviously the music model calls for positioning Missoula as the place, and I apologize for all of the text. I couldn't figure out how to summarize this anymore. But now that it's so big, it's easy to read, right? So first off, position Missoula as the place for music in the region. Develop rich media content on the music scene in Missoula. Rich media content being shoot video, get the drone out, shoot video at performances, work with the stakeholders to collect video that they had on hand, work with the city, Parks and Rec, everybody that could work with us in some capacity. Then we looked at how to target key media and industry influencers and develop relationships, develop long-term communication, and bring them to community experience Missoula. Things like Rolling Stone, Relics Magazine, a whole series of publications, but then also industry leaders. And obviously we're not experts in music, so we relied on the stakeholders to provide us a list of influencers and their industry experts or industry decision makers that they felt they wanted Missoula to have or educate them more on what Missoula had to offer. So we've just now received all those lists. We're still getting some of those lists, and we're kind of working on that phase now. In terms of targeting media, you know, a full-page ad in Rolling Stone is about $180,000, which is kind of blows out our print budget, or most of our budget actually. So we have to look for ways to get unearned media, articles, bring out an influencer from Rolling Stone to write about the opportunity, and look for maybe a collective partnership with maybe another region or other cities to buy something together, but get our message into the major magazines that matter. We're going to create a music microsite. Again, the microsite's job isn't to compete with Logjam or to compete with Knitting Factory. It's simply for us to make sure that we have all of the content a visitor is going to need if they want to take a music-related vacation to Missoula. And then we're going to target all the keywords organically like we've done with arts and culture and drive people to that microsite. And hopefully, if they're serious about their trip and they see a show at Logjam or at Knitting Factory or at the university or the Osprey Stadium, they'll jump there and get what they need. But the microsite is a clearinghouse to make sure we've provided all of the information to plan that trip and deliver on our promise. We're creating a social media and organic search engine strategy to drive Missoula's music scene. That's already kind of in motion, and again, we'll work with the stakeholders to make that happen. Digital paid programmatic messaging, again, a lot of these digital ads that we run, you won't see because you're not the target audience, but they'll run in all of the major regional or other cities where our stakeholders are telling us they're getting ticket sales from. And we'll target and work around that very collectively. And then we'll form strategic partnerships. Who outside of those stakeholders? We just had a great story, a new member, Sky Ranch, and Clinton join us. And one of their strategies is they really want to get involved with the amphitheater out in Bonner and house those artists and be part of that process. And so we try to form these partnerships that help the amphitheater and deliver the other types of services that might push us past a competitor to get that performer to come to Missoula. Next slide. You know, in a smaller sense, we launched a similar little model with the Fort Missoula Regional Park, but it's more around our sports model. We want to position Missoula, with the addition of the regional park especially, as the place for sports in the region. Build rich media, again, shoot video. You're not going to be able to watch a Grizzly or Bobcat game this year on TV or listen to it on the radio or watch it streaming without seeing Missoula as the place to bring your sporting event or to Missoula as the place for sport. We're going to dominate that the best we can this year. But then we're also going to back that up with regional campaigning, digital marketing. With our idea, we're targeting club sports, college sports, complex sports opportunities through cross-media messaging. You know, why would we do this? Because this is great shoulder season heads and beds, right? We can bring these sports clubs in September, October, January, February, when the city struggles to bring in tourists. It's a great opportunity. And we have this huge venue we've got to fill. Next slide. So our current arts and culture efforts, I've touched on it a little, but we've got the travel guide on the website, focused content. We have big chunks of the travel guide dedicated to arts and culture, and that'll continue in this one that comes out in September. Our website, we continue to build that up and add arts and culture content. We actually put up a link that I'll remind everybody that's destinationmissoula.org/arts. And it's an opportunity to enter any information you want about yourselves, your event you're working on, anything you want to share with us you think we should promote. You can do that from home or from work, and you can go to that link and upload all that information. We looked at, and it's a little hard to see with the light right there, but we've worked with, by having a liaison from our office attending Arts Missoula meetings, we've worked on having blog content we've actually developed in conjunction with Arts Missoula and pushed out rather 5, 9, and 10 months ago. That's all part of that number I showed you, that 63,000 people that we've been able to drive, either organically, because those index, right, in search engines and people are looking for them, but then also we push them out through social media channels. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Barb.
Thanks. So you get the basic idea. The reason that we were showing you the music and we were showing you the sports is that there are things that we're currently doing and there are models that we're currently using. And as a committee, we all got talking about it and thought there has to be a model that we can use to do exactly the same thing for arts and culture. But we felt that it was very important that we have the different voices from the community as to what is important in that, just like we went out to the music industry and talked to them about what is important, because what we thought was important when we first started the project did a complete 180 by the time we had finished talking to everybody, because we didn't know enough about the industry, and we're learning, and got great input. So in my mind, that's really why we're here tonight, is to start to open that conversation, and I think we'll have a broader conversation about it at the end of the presentation. We've got one more person that would like to speak a little bit about some of the things that you can do right now with us that you can implement right away, and then I'd like to start the bigger conversation with you guys and get some input. So Lisa Simon from the Radius Gallery is going to talk to you about some of the things that she does in relation to getting her gallery out and what you also can do. Thanks.
Way down here. Thanks for coming tonight. So I'm Lisa Simon from Radius Gallery, and we wanted to make sure when we were talking about this event, we wanted to make sure that there were practical things that we could pass along and get input from. So I drew that straw. So one of the things that I think is really important to know and to understand is that we are making this up. You know, I have a background in teaching and research, and when I decided to do an art gallery, I did what any egghead would do, is I went out and researched, bought every book, and looked at every article that you could do, and was soon horrified to realize that nothing was written on community galleries, opening a community gallery or doing a community gallery. And, you know, and I just think, oh, it was all on Scottsdale, New York, LA, but nothing on a community-based gallery in the middle of the country. So at first I was like, Plan B, Plan B. What's Plan B? But then I realized that that's actually a really good position to be in. And the more I talk to actual gallery owners in this region, that it's a wonderful place to be in, because that means you can make it up. You can move organically through what the community needs and wants and speaks to you. You don't have to follow any rules. So what started out being horrifying ended up being the position that we wanted to be in. So, you know, the people that are here were all from different genres. How many are from the visual arts here? Hi. How about dance? Hi. Theater? Film? That's not a whole lot of film here. And music. Yeah, okay. Are there any that I forgot? What other genres are? I saw radio up there, but I think that kind of is a combination of all of them. Writing, creative writing, which my background is in literature, so of course I forget that. So how many people from writing? And yeah, okay, good. So we come from these different backgrounds. We might have different targets, but we share this desire to have to attract more attention to what we're doing, to bring different people in. Sometimes we feel like we're exhausting our immediate audience, and we just want other audiences to come to us to expand that audience. So we knew that a lot of this talk tonight would be about what the organizations are doing. And sometimes you can hear all those numbers and say, well, how do I fit in there? And so this is just a little bit of that. So for my small business, we had no budget. We're living off our savings for these early years. So what you're trying to do is just utilize what you can do with social media. And we don't have the budget for advertising like a lot of people do. And I'm sure a lot of the arts organizations that I've talked to, you don't have a whole lot of budget for advertising. Thank goodness Destination Missoula is doing it. So one of the things that we can do is use the systems that are already in place and just lock into them. Find those strategic partnerships and find what's already being done, and instead of trying to duplicate it, just lock into it. So a huge service that has really expanded in the last couple of years is MissoulaEvents.net. If you have an event, it should be on there, and the newspapers draw from that, and Destination Missoula draws from that too, and Arts Missoula draws from that. So all these players are drawing from this one source. So you don't have to go, we spend about 2 hours every time we have an event going to different calendars around the state. This is one place where you can get throughout Missoula in one place. And anyone can do this. You don't have to be an organization to do it. Another one, lots of people do this, but do a Facebook event and use the invite section of it. This is a capacity that Facebook provides that a lot of people don't use. They'll make an event and then they won't invite anybody to it. So the invite, and if you don't know what I'm talking about here, just Google it. But this is the most powerful thing because that sends an invitation to everybody. Another thing you should do is help your audience find you. So a lot of times your genre will post a schedule for an event. So for Roots Festival, for the First Friday Gallery Guide. We all know how to find that because we're insiders in Missoula. But as someone who runs a First Friday, I tell so many people, like they come in and they're like, where's First Friday? Where is it? And so to teach them, go to the Gallery Guide. And we made a concerted effort in the last 2 years to take the handout and turn it into a digital thing so we could tap into a mapping and things like that. But if people don't know it's there, it's not helping. So post the Gallery Guide, post your schedules, help your audience find you. If your genre doesn't already have a place to come together and talk about your issues, talk about things that you can do to help your area, then start one. So when I started Radius Gallery, I started the Visual Arts Center, which for the first couple years, I was pretty much the only one posting on it, like calls for art, articles from the industry, those kind of things. But now we have over 500, that's my broker. Now we have over 500 artists on it, and lots of people are posting. So it went from just a single voice, which is not healthy, which does not show healthy community, to now I don't have to say too much on it at all. Everybody's posting on it and commenting on it. And I keep it, the one thing I do in it is I make sure it's regional. So if someone asks to be in part of the group, I make sure they have some connection to the region. If they're from another country or they don't show some connection, I want to kind of keep it small so it doesn't get too diluted. But start one of those, but don't start 10 of them. Your genre only needs one in Missoula. So if someone else has one, but it's not, it's kind of flailing over there, join it and help it grow. I mean, you want to come together rather than have 10 things trying to compete with each other. So a lot of this has to do with social media, because social media is cheap or free. It just takes time. And the time that you spend in it should be creating real content. I find that when people's first starting to use social media, they try to be like real zippy. You know, like let's say something super fun or super hip, or all you have to do to be a content provider on social media is get a good picture of your event or the people involved in your event. Faces are really important. And say something real about it. That's it, one sentence. Those two things will start drawing. If you're sincere and you show activity, like your images should show activity, and then you show sincerity, people will come to you. It's that zippy, fraudy thing that just sounds icky sometimes on Facebook and Instagram. So be a content creator. And I know we see these posts that went viral, and they're just stupid posts, and you wonder how they went viral. Don't count on that to happen. Just continue. I mean, you have to just like plod along. Post something that's beautiful and say something real about it, and just keep doing that until the community builds. We really need strong, real content that's talking about Missoula. That doesn't mean it requires a ton of time. It doesn't mean you have to be a writer to do it. I do most of my posts before I actually have access to my full vocabulary, and I manage to get them out. Okay, two more easy, free, powerful tools, and I'm just starting to understand these now. And as I went to research them a little to do these, I realized that I'm not doing a very good job of it, and that I could do a much better job of it. One is hashtags. This is one way that our community could really talk to each other without having to have a meeting, is we could agree to use the same hashtags. So some of the hashtags that are out there are hashtag Missoula, and try to use the word Missoula in the name, because we're trying to catch people that are going by, just on I-90. So to use the word Missoula to draw people in. Hashtag Missoula, there's thousands of images on there, but they're mostly of mountains and rivers. So I think that would be the strategy there would be like to get in there and infiltrate them with art. So show that, we're more than mountains here, so kind of take over hashtag Missoula. Hashtag Arts Missoula, you would think, that's it, that's us, right? Only 57 posts on hashtags Art Missoula. So, that's a hashtag we could all start occupying. Missoula Art Scene is doing well, and that's mostly because it's the one that E3 Convergence Gallery, Lily, down there has been using, but that's a really good hashtag too, and it has a couple hundred. Missoula Moment is one, is that Destination Missoula's? Okay, so it has thousands of pictures on it. Again, mostly mountains. That's one to take over a little bit and put some art in there. And Missoula Life is one that's also, and I can post these somewhere. And then for the visual arts, we should always be doing, anytime we post for our art walk, Missoula Art Walk and Missoula First Friday are two really good hashtags. There's also one for hashtag Missoula Music, Missoula Children's Theater, which has a ton of images on it. And then there's Dance Missoula. And I didn't look for film or creative writing, but check to see if there is already one out there that sort of fits you before you create another bubble. Because you're trying to feed off what other people are doing rather than start all these different satellites. Like, try to bring it together and go off what other people are doing. The last one, and this is one that I just started reading about. You know, I do just some marketing reading on the side just to see, just to figure out what to do. But I've been reading a lot about reviews, writing reviews, and researching that. And we suck at this. This is one area that we really need to get better, is helping each other with writing reviews for each other. So do this in Google and Facebook first. It's an act of kindness for sure. And this is definitely, because we're trying to attract people, this is definitely a time where if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. It's hard to tell how big or vibrant we are digitally, okay? You might have heard of Missoula, Montana, but the average person driving down 90 doesn't know how big Missoula, Montana is. They get a sense of how big we are and how vibrant we are from looking at Google, right? So this is where we can go in and sort of occupy this area and make ourselves seem bigger. And not even seem bigger, seem as big as we are. You know, according to Tom's definition of, you know, we are on par with all these other bigger cities, but our digital footprint does not show that. And that's something that we could do, is to increase our digital footprint. So for instance, we know, those of us who live here, that the Missoula Art Museum is a fabulous institution that brings all kinds of artists and programming for contemporary art into this area, and has for years. 33 reviews. We need to all go home and write a review for the Missoula Art Museum. The Montana Museum of Art and Culture has 4 reviews. And Jeremy and I just switched reviewing each other like 2 weeks ago, so that's us, part of it. Radius has 5 reviews. Dana Gallery has 3 reviews. If you know an organization that you don't want to see drop off the map, go review them. And you don't have to say much. Just say, love what this organization brings to the community. Love the diversity. You actually can just hit 5 stars. You don't have to say anything. But if you think of that, the Missoula Art Museum has 33 reviews. The Seattle Art Museum has 845 reviews. We could generate 800 reviews just by doing it ourselves and asking 10 of our friends to go write this review as well. We could make ourselves look as big as Seattle digitally. But that is us doing that. That's not an organization. You know, Destination Missoula, Arts Missoula can't do that. That's what the people on the street, the artists can do, the arts organizations can do. And just when people come to your organization, ask them to write a review. If they say, I love what you're doing here, thank you, write a review for me. That's all I have. Thanks very much.
So, here's the deal. What do we do? What do we do from here? You know, how can we, as a community of artists, help each other to define ourselves, to take steps forward, to share resources, to make a model for arts and culture that is successful as some of the other models that we've been working on. I mean, there's nothing that gets in our way except for the fact that we don't tend to work in groups. We tend to be in bubbles, and those bubbles don't seem to intersect very much, which really is what this is about. This is totally about drawing people together that don't maybe necessarily always work together into a single voice that can change Missoula, right? So I would entertain a discussion. It doesn't have to be a long discussion, but a discussion that has some stakeholding ideas that go along with that. Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, I thank Lisa for that really great presentation, because I think the nuts and bolts are really very, very important. And sometimes we get caught up in the whole la-di-da of it all, and I think, so I want to thank you for that. I think to begin the conversation I'm Greg Johnson, by the way. To begin the conversation, I think in terms of, I think the partnership also should include business leaders and the city government, Mr. Mayor. And how we dialogue and how we create this model has to include them, I think. And I think I've been with this business from the very beginning, and I do think that we have to have a partnership between the city and our business brother and sister and us, because there's so many of us. I don't think the music model works that well. It's a great model, but I don't. Just look at this room. There's so many. I don't know how many people you had to talk to create the music model. But there's a lot more people and a lot more entities and a lot more buy-in that you have to find to create a model.
And I agree with you, Greg. It doesn't have to be that model. All we're trying to do is say that when people came together, when we could actually get people's voice together and find out what was important, then we created the model. So that's really what this is about to me, is finding out what is important to you guys and what is the message that you want out there, and where are the important places for you that you believe that message needs to be. You know, we know where our visitors are coming from, but you guys know the arts world, and you know it in each one of your individual parts of that industry. And so that's where we're asking for help, is to be able to get your larger voice out. Not everybody's going to agree on the same thing. I've been chasing after this for 14 years since I've been in this office, and it's like herding cats to get, the arts industry together. But by dialoguing, I think we can start that at least.
I guess I would say, that was my beer bottle.
What do you want to say?
This
would be my job.
Anyhow, I attended a meeting like this a couple of years ago with many of you that are in this room, and we talked about this. And it was exciting to me at the time, and then nothing. Now it's 3 years later. So I guess this interests me, and I'm interested in helping. But I need more of a clear path on how I can help from you guys if you want that help, because I guess, now I have to leave in a couple minutes because it's 7 o'clock, but, I would love to help how I can, and I'm all about this vision, but I think it's just the idea of what exactly can we do, those of us, to help. And I know last time a big part of the discussion was around coming together and involving other industries, and the word that everybody hates, branding, but thinking about what that might be.
I think one of the differences between that meeting and this one is there was a real effort in this one to reach out to individual artists and not only organizations. So I think hopefully we got that word out to more people like that. I do think that the Arts Committee of Destinations really wants a step to happen. That's really important to us. It's important to Missoula. And I think that what we're looking for is stakeholder input to identify a step, to go ahead and take that. And I don't know if it can go to you, Tom, at some email address or something, where we can gather stakeholder input that says, this is what I need, this is what we need. And we're not just talking about how to get funded or something. We're talking about where do you see us going, where do you want to go, and then to try and put these pieces into a format that takes action. I think that what we haven't pointed out is there's some action to be taken here from just what you heard tonight. You hear that Destination Missoula has some resources that we can all participate in. They want to tell our story. Let's give them our story. They have a place to send it. Yeah.
So you mentioned that, you kind of were wanting artists to come to this, and I'm an artist, and both Tarn and I want to thank you, Montana Arts Council, to do group community projects in our community to bring the community together that are arts-centered. And so I was excited for this because I was hoping to get some connections and see like, oh, who can, help with our projects, which are nearly 9 months long, field projects to use the arts to bring everyone together. And so what I got here is Destination Missoula and Arts Missoula. And so I guess I'm curious for more like direction and connection.
Well, I
and-
certainly don't have all the answers, as Greg knows, and most other people know about me. Yes.
There's an organization that's meeting at the exact next month. It's called the Artist Alliance. And it
Yes.
meets different places. It's been at the Museum of the Art Museum and various locations. And it's kind of an in-person what Lisa's doing online. And I think both those things, if more people looked at the Arts Missoula and Lisa's and the Artist Alliance. The Artist Alliance is run by Stoney Sasser, who is here, but I guess she's not. And she's really amazing. Just to be in the same room as Stoney is enough. But then to have more information.
Well, this truly, to me, is a first step, but it needs to take a second step. Trying to put us together as a group that will discuss. We don't have business after hours that we all go to and talk about what it is we've got going on.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should, yeah. Yes, yeah.
Can I, one thing that just comes to mind that I would suggest is like maybe a 4-hour strategic planning session where we can go through a strategic plan for tourism and the arts in Missoula with people who want to donate their time to do that. And I think that that's a good place to start so that we can sort of get some goals, 1-year goal, 2-year goal, 3-year goals, and maybe kind of map out a roadmap to how something like this might happen. I mean, I certainly would be interested in joining something like that.
There has been some suggestions that we need something to focus on down the road, such as an event that we could all draw together and work on. That would be something that would help organize that kind of a sense of goal orientation. So let's all drive to the same parking spots. But I think that that's something to comment on, a strategic plan, sort of an approach.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's really what we need. The one thing I don't want to see is, all of us go through this thing that we do. We sit down, we have a strategic planning meeting for 4 hours and come up with somewhat of a roadmap, and then it sits on a shelf and nothing ever happens with it. And so the bigger goal to me is if we can do that with individual voices, so it's not just the big organizations that are coming together. There is a tourism and arts kind of strategic plan in the master plan downtown, and that was kind of the beginning of it, but of course that's been many years. And so I think it would be really great if we can do that type of thing again, but with the commitment from everybody that it will have very specific goals and we'll move forward with them. That we can take our piece and we can tell your story in the way that you want us to tell your story, but that everybody has got a piece in this and everybody is willing to commit to it.
Yes.
I'm thinking in terms of implementation of how to get information out so that we can all share it, because sometimes in a group like this, it becomes somewhat unwieldy and we couldn't actually go until 10.
Yeah.
My feeling is to create a whiteboard, and maybe Tom could create the whiteboard for us all to throw in ideas. I mean, it's pretty chaotic. It's chaos theory in a way. But if Tom could create a whiteboard that we all throw our ideas at it, and somehow, I don't know whether it should be public or not, but the idea of all of us being able to freewheelingly throw stuff out onto the whiteboard that exists somehow that we create, that might be an initial step to get the kind of data from the masses that we have here to what we're thinking.
You mean like a Google Doc?
Something.
Maybe more focused for a strategic planning meeting that would be, I mean, that could, you could draw from that to, I also think it's really important in terms of inviting individual artists here is, I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of individual artists spending this kind of time doing these kinds of meetings is exhaustive, and we don't really see how it's coming back to us specifically in the community, and how this kind of programming comes back to us on an individual scale. And I don't mean, I mean, it's really important, and I see the benefit of all of this, but I think it's also important to, you know, see how it's going the other direction as well.
And I think that's why, you know, that's why we're asking for your voice, because we need, it is what we need to hear you as an individual artist. What does it mean to you, and what is it that you need? And you know, in our instance, what we're doing is we're looking at the arts in Missoula from the 30,000-foot view. Okay, that's our job. Our job is to take the arts in Missoula out to the world. Okay, and then incrementally we start coming down with community members, with industry members, and bringing them into galleries and bringing them, you know, maybe it is bringing them into individual studios, you know, those kinds of things, but without being able to hear your voice, we don't know what that is, and we can't make itineraries, and we can't put things together that actually could bring them to your doorstep, and that's where we need your help.
And it's one of those services that is free. I mean, they need access to you, and you have access to them. I think that that's really a natural thing for them.
I may have missed something. I stepped back for a minute, but I'm wondering about cross kind of, you know, disciplinary messaging, because I think that one thing we don't have is like access to the sports market, you know what I mean? And access to the these other markets that are, I mean, it's great that you are helping us drive cultural tourists to our destinations. That's awesome. But, you know, folks that come for sporting events and music events, also, a lot of them, probably, you know, a decent percentage of them love visual arts too.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, other art forms. And so how can we enhance that cross-disciplinary marketing?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do with some of the messaging that we're doing, like the average you saw with, you know, you can catch a wave and show on the same block. You know, you have to understand that our messaging is going to be broader, right? It's not going to be go to Radius Gallery or go to, you know, it's not going to be, it's the bigger, broader messages. But it's targeting the areas that we may not know to be targeting, right? Or to be bringing in writers from the arts world that are important and influential that you guys may know that we don't know. You know, that's part of what we do is we contact them, ask them to come to our community, and then we will rely on you guys to help us set up, you know, an incredible trip for them to be able to actually experience the arts in Missoula. Those are the kinds of things that we have the budgets to be able to do that garner a lot for you guys for nothing other than your time. And those are the kinds of things that individually will make a difference for individual artists.
How many people actually knew that? That you could actually access Destination Missoula, get your story out, and talk about your events?
Yeah.
Right.
And most people
See, now that should be a giant benefit to sitting through where the arts are now in Missoula, realizing that we have a large voice, and realizing also that we have access to them. Okay, that's number one. I think before the end of this evening, I would like, you know, it's getting late, so I would like to agree that we could send our ideas to one place okay? In order for it to be, you know, crunched together, we'll put it into categories. We'll send back out to you, we have your emails, if we don't, make sure we do, okay? And we'll send back out to you what your ideas were and how they fit together, what we think they are. But we need your voices to do that, okay? Probably the best place to send it would be destinationmissoula.org/arts. Okay, everybody get that? destinationmissoula.org/arts. And if we could collect those things, again, it's a step in the right direction. And also knowing that you can access this kind of service with your personal story. It doesn't, I mean, individual teacher, individual painter, individual anything. It doesn't have to be about the organization. It can be about your art. Yes?
Well, actually, on that note, I'm interested in us all coming together and how to connect the individual artists to the organizations, because I'm an independent artist, and I just moved back to Montana after being away for 10 years. And I'm in the process right now of bringing everything I can and all of my arts to this community and helping all the organizations getting together with you, making events. And I feel like we could make that more functional. I'm feeling a little, that's why I'm here, to just meet all of you and say, well, let's make some incredible stuff happen here. This is what I can offer, and then we work together on that. So not only saying these are the events we're doing, but how can we connect the dots, use your space, use your voice, use this craft beer, whatever it is, and say, so that's something I need. That's something I would like to request.
So the networking part of it.
Yeah, and even like, okay, I'm trying to register an arts business, you've done it before, let's get together.
So speaking of which, the hour's late. I appreciate everybody that came. Thank you so much. I think there's still some food out there.
There's a ton of food out there.